But you see, everybody just always seems to wait for the monetary policies to be said, to be, announced, and they just take direction. They really don't even look at the trade policy or the fiscal policies as much as they should.
Okay, maybe they should start looking at it, but I think they look at it. This is a fiscally dominant economy. What central bank does most times is to respond to what has been done on the fiscal side, on the industrial side, and on the trade side. So whether we listen or not, it's happening. We still have a lot to do about constraints to infrastructure that will make our people to produce more SME development. I mean, in the long run, what determines the value of your exchange rate is your ability to supply goods outside the country. So what we are just doing is just a remedy. And if anybody say, why would the central bank do that? These are the current moments. It's like, okay, if it's not done now, it will be done later. And it may be worse than now. So the best is look at the trade-off, not only for today, but the trade-off in terms of tomorrow, especially your dwindling foreign reserve and what can happen to your exchange rate later if it gets out of hand.
But Damilola, how does this now, we've talked so much about domestic players. How does this affect international players?
Oh, well, you can look at it from this angle that now the uncertainty to an extent is over. I'll say to an extent, because now you could say that if around, let's say, 210, 215 is the new low, so you have an understanding of where the Naira is trading, because the uncertainty was that nobody knows how further low the Naira is going to fall. But with what the CBN has done, it has sort of restored some calm in the market. So international investors are looking at it. This is one of the things they were requesting for. You might need to devalue your currency, or you might need to implement some measures to restore sanity and stability. And the CBN has done that. It has restored some calm. So we expect international investors, for instance, the JP Morgan index, we've been put on negative watch. I'm of the opinion that we will still remain on the index because of what the CBN has done, because it has allayed some fears. And this, especially investors that were in a wait-and-see mode, and let's see what's going to happen, we might see some funds being brought in later on. But we shouldn't forget the political uncertainty that is still there. So right now, we expect that, aside from the political uncertainty and the uncertainty about oil prices, if you're just looking at what the CBN has done, this has restored some calm and would encourage investors at least to bring in more funds into the system, and that would boost liquidity for our markets.
Let's still talk about that fact that Nigeria has been placed on that negative watch by JP Morgan. You see, a lot of international investors go to where they feel they can make profit. And at a time like this, where the JP Morgan Chase actually said that there was a shortage of liquidity, we will likely see a shortage of liquidity now that the central bank has closed the ARDAS.
Well, right now, because of what has been done, your dollar is going to become more expensive. And I mentioned earlier, that is going to reduce demand. And now we have so many sellers, so many buyers, we have so many people supplying at the interbank. You have the CBN, you have banks, you have the oil companies, you have exporters, tourists. So the funds are going to be there. But the issue right now we're having is the oil price, because no one knows whether oil price is going to fall lower. So the funds coming from that angle, there's still that risk of it being reduced. But the fact that the ARDAS has been scrapped and the demand pressure is expected to reduce in the long run. So in the end, you see that your market starts getting liquid, and that would attract investors in the long run.
Dr. Oluwakiri, she mentioned that we don't know where oil prices are going to be. As of this morning, oil prices are hovering around $60 a barrel, and there's a tendency for it to drop further. Except, of course, something miraculously happens and maybe more US rigs get sucked in somewhere, and then we'll now begin to see more demand. But if that doesn't happen, what next?
We pray that it doesn't get that bad. But, I mean, that's the penalty we're paying for having not diversified our economy. For everybody has been saying this for a long time ago. If oil price doesn't bounce back with what the CBN has just done, we are still safe relatively. But what we just hope for is that it doesn't get worse.
So let's have another scenario that in the eventuality, oil prices drop further. Because you remember when oil prices started dropping as at June last year, a lot of energy analysts were expecting that oil prices would fall. It fell to 45. In fact, some felt it was going to fall to as low as $40 per barrel. Now, that's another scenario that the economic managers, really need to be looking at? Of course, the fiscal aspect is looking at it, but for the monetary aspect?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why the CBN has been able to do this is to emphasize that occurrence. $40, $50 we can still do, but anything lower than that can be worse. But currently, we hope that it doesn't get that worse. That's just it. But in the long term, or in the medium to long term, Nigeria needs to learn how to diversify the economy. Any economy that relies solely on the exportation of a single commodity is always susceptible to external shocks. And that's what we are currently having. And
so apart from the fact that agriculture seems to be, you know, the much sang song right now, which other sector of the economy should, you know, the economic managers begin to focus more on ensuring that we have good exportable products out of?
Yeah, there are two issues. One way is how do we limit the import first? In other words, can we satisfy domestic demand? Then from there we can then move to export. One area is oil refining, and a lot of foreign reserve goes into importation of refined products. So we need to do something about that. Agriculture, we're trying, but we can still do better, especially in terms of rice, in terms of some of these things that we commonly consume in Nigeria. So first step is how do we save our foreign reserve? The second step is how do we generate more foreign reserves? And agro-allied may be a very good way to go. If we produce, we have abundant land, we produce a lot of agricultural commodity. If we can store more, if we can have better infrastructure whereby I can move my goods from one area to the other in the country. So those things can make it better for us. So we save our foreign reserve first, and then later we'll try as much as possible to generate more. But in the end, we must find a way to diversify the economy. This will keep on happening if we diversify the economy.
Well, Damilola, just before I let you go, this means that more tightening, Nigerians should begin to tighten their belts more in the days ahead, because it might not just be an easy ride.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it just means that you need to allocate your resources more efficiently. You said tightening your belt. So it's basically, it's going to reduce leakages. You as an individual, you need to now find out, okay, fine, what do I need to spend my resources on? What do I need to cut back on? And as a government, we need to also find a way to actually save our reserves, like you mentioned, cut down on leakages and find a way to boost our reserves. Because if you have a reserve level that is substantial enough to support your currency, that you won't have any issue, you won't be thinking about devaluation and all that. The CBN is talking about devaluation now because our reserves are below 33. So we obviously can't defend the currency as best as it can. So we actually need to cut down on leakages and find a way to build our reserves later on.
Well, thank you so much, Damilola, and thank you also, Dr. Oluwakere. Dr. Emmanuel Oluwakere is a research analyst with the Financial Derivatives Company Limited, and Damilola Kimbami is also a research analyst with FDC Limited. Both of them join me on the program to share their thoughts on latest developments at the foreign exchange market. Well, Business Morning continues in just a moment, and when we do come back, we'll focus on one of the sectors that my guest just mentioned now, and that is increasing the potential of agribusiness. Please join me again.